wonderful to see so many of you here and to see old teachers, friends, Linda Chalker, someone from Achimota, who was, as he said, very courageous to come here. And he's really been a wonderful gentleman. He's an old friend, and he's always been that way. Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us. And it's wonderful to have so many old boys here in this room with their friends, their families, their wives, and spending a night together. My wife and I run into many Ghanaians wherever we go around the world. Invariably, someone comes to me and whispers, "I'm also an old boy." And it's been wonderful to see that we are spread all over the world. But as you heard this evening, we had a unique experience. It was a multiracial faculty from UK, from South Africa, from West Indies, and that was a very important experience for young boys growing up in Africa. It was also important for some of us here who were at school during the struggle for independence, and to see the changes taking place in society, where we ourselves sometimes role-play, pretending to belong to one party or the other, pretending to argue with groups, those who belong to the CPP, those who belong to the opposition, and constantly trying to stay abreast. For secondary school students, I think we were politically very alert and very astute. But that period also had a profound impact on us. I know it had on me, and I suspect on the other students, not only at Mfantsipim and the education we got, and the sense of public duty, the ethos of public duty that was instilled in us by our headmaster Battels and the other teachers. Even when he was punishing you, he was giving you a lesson about civic duty. I recall a conversation I had with him. Somehow they thought I was a rather naughty boy. And I recall one conversation I had with him. He said, "Annan, you're always on the borderline. You never step out of line and we can't touch you, but one of these days you will. And we will discover who runs the school." And he said, "Given half a chance, you may grow up to be a fairly decent citizen." Anyway, it was that sort of spirit and that sort of atmosphere. And I remember one day when Reverend Brownfield walked into the classroom, straight to the blackboard, and put on a white sheet of paper about 1 meter by 1 meter with a black dot in the right corner. And he backed away and asked, "Boys, what do you see?" All of us in unison shouted, "Black dot." He looked around and said, "Not a single one of you saw the broad white paper. A meter by meter, you saw only the black dot," which was an infinitesimal area. I said, "Don't go through life focusing on the negative. There's lots of goodness, which you must also be open to and be aware and build on it." And these are lessons we all take with us into our lives. But I think, above all, we're brought up to believe that once you've had education and you've been privileged to do something, you have an obligation and a duty to serve, to help your community. And it doesn't matter what you do. In fact, when I travel around the world, students ask me, "What do I do to become a good global citizen?" I always tell them it starts in your community. Whatever you can do in your own community, it begins there. When you see something wrong, don't sit back. You can team up with a group of friends and try and do something about it. You know, today we are facing lots of major problems that we all have to solve, whether it's a climate change, whether it's poverty, whether it's diseases, malaria, but they all have global dimension. But at the same time, they are important in our individual communities, in our towns and in our cities. And so we all have a chance to make a contribution. We don't have to be at some particular level, at the global level, to make a contribution. Tonight, I'm very pleased to see that you're all gathered here, thinking about what we can do to support the school that gave us all so much. I'm also happy to see that you are transforming MOBA into a foundation that will not only embrace students from the school, but also be open to other well-wishers who might want to help the school. If you set up an organization of the kind and you restrict it to old boys, sometimes we even are more restrictive than that. Class of 57, class of 58, class of 64, and we segregate ourselves without really pooling our efforts together. And I hope the foundation will give us a chance to do that. And I'm also happy to hear that the foundation may not be limited to old students in UK and Ireland only, but you may reach out to those in the United States and hopefully in other parts of Europe. We have to expand that reach to be able to increase your capacity and ability to raise resources to help. It is amazing, for example, what alumni of American universities do, the amount of money they raised annually. But of course, it's been a tradition where one tracks them, you know where they are, and you know how to reach them. This may not be the culture for us and for other countries, including countries in Europe. I recall for about 10 years I was a chairman of the board of directors of the UN International School in New York. And we decided to do some fundraising. There was a Danish gentleman on the board with me, and he got a letter about fundraising. He didn't react. He got a second one. He didn't react. And then one day he came into the board meeting, quite furious actually. I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "Well, I would tell the whole board." A letter was written asking for money. I didn't react. I got a second one. But what happened finally is what really got me. They gave a letter for my daughter to bring to me. And he said, and in fact, I said, "But they didn't tell your daughter what was in the letter." He said, "She's a very curious young girl." And I suspect she read it. And his reaction was, "Look, I'm a parent. I come from a country where we have free education, public education. I pay my taxes, we have free public education. Here I pay fees which are quite high. And once I've paid my fees, I expect to be left alone. But I haven't paid the fees. If you keep sending me such letters, it's really harassment." And we went through this. I had another example where one of the board members was a man of 72 with an 8-year-old child. Who didn't understand why we should raise fees, why we can't keep everything the way it is. And a banker on the board who argued that the school has done a lot for him, that normally when your children are traveling abroad, you give them names. When you are in Brazil, call this number, a friend of mine is there, or when you're in Ghana or India. Said, in my case, it's my son. The school was quite a unique one because we had children from 120 nationalities and teachers from 56 nationalities. said, my son will give me, so I went to school with so when you're in Pakistan, please call him and ask him to write. And then he will call, and the father is Minister of Finance or something, and he will go to Brazil, so the son was giving him introductions. And he believed in that sort of multi-racial, multicultural, and international education, which for him was the essential part of excellence. And he argued that excellence cost money, and that we should try not to maintain fees at such a low level that we will not be able to invest in the school and maintain the excellence that we were all seeking, and that it was better to charge higher fees and give scholarships to those who cannot afford it, rather than bring the level down. And this is something I think in our societies we also need to bear in mind. You have to invest in education. And as Annan was saying, no society can develop without healthy and well-educated citizens. It is a must. And you cannot get excellence on the cheap. Governments have to do it, but each of us have a responsibility also to chip in where we can. So now with this foundation, I believe we have an opportunity to help. And I think Jackie said we should set an achievable goal and start with the library and build on from there. And I'm sure beginning tonight, you're all not only going to contribute, but you're also going to tell your friends whether they went to Achimota or they didn't go to any of the schools in Uganda. There could be friends, colleagues here that you work with. Tell them about the school and tell them the contribution they can make. But tonight I'm really, really happy to be back home again, back home with friends and, ex-students from Mfantsipim. It was a very happy period of my life, and I think we all had fun there and also walked away with some knowledge and some understanding of how we need to work together. And we are grateful to the teachers who taught us, and particularly those who are here and those who are not here. And as we end tonight and we go back to our respective homes and jobs and all this, we should from time to time think of the school and respond when our president writes to you asking you to make a little gesture. I think we will all be prepared to do that. But in any event, let me end by saying that Nan and I are extremely happy to have been able to join you tonight. We've had some discussion. We've had discussion for some time about organizing an evening like this, and we finally made it. But we should not only have made it, we should make it pay. Thank you very much.